Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest is a returning guest, Allison Yee, founder and CEO of UpNext. Great to see you on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to see you.
So we were talking about it a little bit before we started this segment that you're actually a returning guest. You're early in your business startup phase back in 2018. So tell us, why don't you start by telling our audience a little about UpNext and what it is that you do?
Sure. So, up next is an ecosystem all about supporting emerging retail brands. So, we help founders test out their ideas in a brick and mortar setting and grow their businesses through non-traditional retail channels.
Wonderful. So, obviously, a really challenging time for retail over the last several years, certainly as we went through the pandemic. Tell us a little bit about, how your company helps create the platform, but B, I would imagine since retail is typically an expensive endeavor to start, given the overhead costs and build out and all those types of things. How do you help your client base to get going?
You really hit the nail on the head already. We are all about creating low risk opportunities that allow entrepreneurs to really experiment and test their way through their retail journey without putting a second mortgage on their house or spending all their life savings or making investments that they just don't know are going to be the right pathway for them. So we do this in a number of different ways. Essentially, we help connect founders and businesses with spaces that are looking to host pop-ups. So we work with a lot of independent landlords and developers who are interested in bringing local retail into the mix at their properties. And we also launched an initiative during the pandemic, actually, in a response to sort of the economic development need that it was glaring at the time and has continued to be just a great way to revitalize communities where we have incubator spaces. So under the name Project Pop-Up, we create these turnkey storefronts that rotate with different brands seasonally. So they get to test drive brick and mortar for just a few months at a time. The space comes equipped with fixtures and marketing support and all sorts of things. So they can really focus on running their business day to day and seeing if retail is something they want to do long term. And then most recently, we launched a community called the Retail Playground, which is all about connecting these brands with our team of experts, but also with each other and opening different doors to opportunity through collaboration and partnership. So it's really about essentially building that village, finding the people just like you would as a parent, as a business owner, you really need that as well.
So really fascinating because I wasn't all that familiar with the concept of pop-up, maybe going back pre-pandemic, and it always seemed to me when I first saw it that it was really innovative sorts of concepts that people did in pop-ups. Not to bash any of the large donut shops, but this really unique or sort of fun donut concept or various types of retail. So have you found that retail has become more innovative with the advent of sort of pop-up and this opportunity for people to just, maybe this isn't the right phrase, but give it a shot, try it out?
Absolutely. I mean, we are really attracted to innovative businesses, and I think vice versa, because those that have the mindset that they want to test and experiment and create an experience through a pop-up are also those that are doing things a little differently in their business and really understand where retail has evolved to or where it's headed, which is about creating an environment that people are willing to get off their couch for, that they really want to engage and get to know the person and the story behind the business. And so we see all different types of creative brands and businesses coming out, or even if it's a more traditional business, we will always encourage them to put a little spin on it, do something buzzworthy, host events, keep people coming back again and again to really maximize whatever time they have, whether it's a weekend, a month, a year in a pop-up space and put themselves on the map.
And is that something that's really available to anybody with a concept or a retail concept? Is as you said, the timeframes can be as little as a weekend to a year. Is that sort of the parameters, or are they always flexible and really depending on what you want to pursue and it's constantly changing?
Yeah, so our definition of a pop-up is anything up to a year, and it can be as little as a weekend, just a couple of days. And we use a lot of different formats, whether it's a physical brick and mortar storefront that they're popping up in for usually a little bit longer there, or a mobile format that pops up on places like the Rose Kennedy Greenway right now, or in a private property. There's all different places that you can bring retail in an accessible way. But really, it comes down to what the business's goals are, if they're trying to do something for a peak season, if they just want to do a marketing activation as opposed to the goal of testing out retail for the longer term. And matchmaking. It's a process to make sure everything aligns. Is this the right fit for the location? Is this the right fit for the brand and their budget and what they're trying to achieve? So we go through a really fun process
I,
to put
I
the
guess I
pieces
hadn't really,
together.
I guess I really hadn't thought about it, but really in a lot of ways, at least going back to decades and decades, holiday trees were the original pop-up in a lot of ways, right? I mean, it was a very seasonal thing, and then certainly around Halloween, there's stores that show up for a little period of time, and those maybe were prior to what we saw as maybe more innovative sort of retail pop-up opportunities. So does your company represent the retailer? Does it represent the landlord? Who's your client in this mix? Or is it both?
It's actually both. It's actually both. So we work closely with the brands that are popping up, the founders and entrepreneurs behind them, and with the property owners who want to bring these into the equation. And so it's really about creating and nurturing these relationships and making sure that everyone is speaking the same language and has the same expectations and creating something interesting together. So we really work with all different pockets of the industry. And then there's the consumer who is essential to the equation, and making sure that they have the information, that they know where they can find these brands and when, because it can happen very quickly. It can pop up and pop down. So we have a lot of touch points where we're always sending updates and messages and amplifying all of the marketing that the brands do or the properties do as
Oh,
well.
so that was my question. So you guys really serve in the marketing capacity as well to create awareness around the opportunity if it is for a short-lived period of time?
We're definitely a layer of it, but as we will tell every single brand or partner that we work with, it's a collaborative process. Everyone needs to be shouting from the rooftops what's happening, where it's happening, when it's happening, over and over again, because it takes so much these days to get through the saturated messages that if we all use our spheres of influence, our little circles to spread the word, then we can get through and then we can really make an impact and help empower these pop-ups to be successful.
So, Allison, one of the things I want to ask is, let's start with your client or your customer who may be a first-time retailer. What are some of the things that you're finding that people are surprised by? I've got in my mind what some of the challenges might be, but one of the things that I think about is a retail lease is not necessarily people don't really understand the mechanics how retail leases work, but it may be different in a short-term
Mhm.
environment. But to tell us what is some of the things that people come to you and often maybe for advice for anybody thinking about it out there, what are the common things that you come across that people go, I had no idea.
Sure. Well, we try to simplify the process as much as possible. So wherever we can have the opportunity to roll utilities, for example, into the rent or create a partnership approach, we want to simplify the structure so that you really understand what you're signing up for, what your cost will be, have something that you can come to expect over the course of the pop up. But we definitely get questions around, well, I need to provide insurance. Yes, absolutely. Will I need to be open certain hours? The more the better in many cases. Staffing can be a big pinch point for entrepreneurs who think that they may be able to cover all of those hours on their own, but that's a little bit detached from the reality of running a retail business and having a life. So we really work hard through our courses, our community, our conversations, all of these different interactions to educate the brands and the founders behind them on what to expect, how much effort and time you will need to be pouring into this. Because even if you are getting a really accessible rent and signing a license agreement or a lease that is as simple as possible, There's still a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. It goes beyond supplying your inventory and merchandising your shop. You need to be prepared to staff it, to market it, to host events, to build relationships with your neighbors, even if you're there just for a short time. There are all these ways that you can tap into a community and make your pop-up experience really successful, but it's definitely going to take rolling up your sleeves and getting excited about all of those nitty-gritty details.
And I would imagine one of the other pieces that you guys bring to the table that is probably often not thought about is the whole regulatory environment and licensing, as you mentioned, et cetera. Because every community is different, every town is different, they have different regulations, and that can be certainly challenging for anybody opening any sort of retail environment. So,
Absolutely. Much easier in the dry goods retail space to get a certificate of occupancy without having to go through the health department. We do food pop-ups, but they are fewer and further between because of all of the hoops you have to jump through, which can take quite a bit of time before you're allowed to open. I will say, typically, we get this question a lot from the municipalities that we work with for Project Pop-Up, and we've been pleasantly surprised. Most of the time, the communities are so excited to have fresh, new concepts, small businesses coming in and testing out what it's like to do business in their neighborhoods, that they are willing to work with them. They're willing to create pathways to get signage approved quickly, to get a permit or a license, whatever they need to operate. And so that hasn't been as hard a hurdle to overcome as you might expect.
excellent. Now, as you know, Radio Entrepreneurs, we're all about lessons of entrepreneurship, and you've given some for your prospective clientele. You disclosed to me that this is the second time you're joining Radio Entrepreneurs, the first time very early into your business career. If we can't end the segment without me asking, what are some of the lessons that you've learned over the course of the last 6 or so years that you wish somebody would have told you prior to starting your business?
There are so many. I would say I've been an entrepreneur full time for almost 7 years. I have failed more times than I can count, and I would say you haven't really tried pushing your business to the limits if you haven't failed quite as many times, because you have to experiment. You have to be willing to take risks, not necessarily major financial risks, but risks in doing things outside your comfort zone, putting yourself and your business out there, making phone calls and introducing yourself to people that you are really intimidated by. So just and being willing to embrace all that entrepreneurship can offer and seeing opportunity everywhere, but also being bold enough to go after it. That would be one. I would say find your community. That's a big one. That is something that took me probably the better part of the first year to learn, and I have not stopped doing it since. So, whether it's paid communities or social circles or just tapping into other business owners and their knowledge base, listening to great podcasts, like not feeling alone, because the isolation of entrepreneurship is almost worse than anything else, at least in my experience. And so you need people you can talk to on those tough days. I've been able to build a team, but that did not happen overnight. And not everyone works well alone. So know yourself, trust yourself, and don't be afraid to seek out all of the support that you can.
Allison Yee, wonderful insight, wonderful suggestions, and really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. If people want to learn more about your business or want to reach out to you and get guidance or engage with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
There's lots of ways to find us. You can find us online at poppingupnext.com, and that will link you out to Project Pop-Up as well as the retailplayground.com. And we are active on LinkedIn and Instagram at Popping Up Next, or my own handle at the Allison Yee. Please send me a message. I'm always happy to chat.
Fantastic. Allison Yee, founder and CEO of UpNext. Well, it's great to have you on Radio Entrepreneurs, and we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.